transformation of my own health. The first thing in a woman's body is to shut down the reproductive system.
I've gotten pregnant every single time we've tried on the first go. And
that's just one part of the story.
Most people don't even know that.
They tell you need to have 3 miscarriages, something else going on. And so painful they like threw up or they almost passed out. Pain with sex, endometriosis. You can't diagnose over a podcast.
Medicine has moved forward because of experimentation. First, test tube baby.
Freeze the eggs.
I will be sending you a legal notice. Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Biohack-it. And today I have Aimee Raupp. Luckily, was going to be in Miami this week, and me and you had been talking for a little bit. We followed each other on Instagram. We've been sending messages to each other, and she finally told me she's going to be coming to Miami. And what a time after what happened to both of us last week to be in Miami. So let me give you an incredible little introduction to my guest. So Aimee's a licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, and fertility expert with over 2 decades of experience. Holding a master's degree in traditional oriental medicine, Aimee specializes in helping women optimize their health and fertility through holistic wellness, nutrition, stress management, and mind-body practices. She's also the author of best-selling books, including Yes, You Can Get Pregnant, Yes, We Can, and Body Belief, and the Egg Quality Diet, which focuses on boosting fertility naturally, helping autoimmune conditions, and improving egg health through nutrition. Aimee, it's such an honor to have you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Everything about what you do and how you practice and your belief system resonates so much with me on a deep yes in my body. Yes. And has been so much how I have been navigating my personal fertility journey. So I'm excited to have you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
So tell me a little bit how you got into this, like brought you onto this path.
Yeah, so I didn't choose it. I'll say that. I always feel like I was, put in the right place. But my original goal, I have an undergraduate degree in biology and chemistry, and the plan was to go to medical school. That was always my goal. I didn't get in the first time I applied. I didn't do so well on my MCATs. My GPA was great, but anyway, long story short, turned out to be the greatest blessing of my life, I would say. And I went into graduate school, and I wound up out at UCSD in California and San Diego. And just, of course, through, I don't believe there's any coincidences in life, but one of the guys on my floor, he was a neuropharmacologist, and he was also an herbalist. And he taught at the acupuncture school, Pacific College of Oriental Medicine there in San Diego. And again, lots of little things came into place, but I wound up leaving that path at UCSD. I was on path to do the MD PhD program and became a Chinese medicine doctor. So I went to the 4-year master's program for acupuncture and traditional oriental medicine. And it was amazing. I mean, it for me too, at that age, I think I was 22 at the time, I, was on path to become a medical doctor, and I was not living a very healthy lifestyle myself. I had an eating disorder. I was probably drinking every single night. I was a marathon runner, but I was like an over-exerciser, and I actually started going for acupuncture and Chinese medicine, and that was the beginning of the transformation of my own health. And really an awakening. And then to see what I love about Chinese medicine is, and we use Oriental and Chinese interchangeably, so I'll probably do that. There's always an emotional connection to disease. And disease is just disharmony in the body, like a miscommunication. It's not an on-off switch. And so that really resonated with me. And then, I went into general practice. I never wanted to specialize, but at the time, I think I was number 1,216 acupuncturist in the state of New York. And so mostly women were coming to me, and they were mostly women with like period problems and anxiety. And then I just started seeing a lot of fertility challenges. And then one thing led to another. I'd written my first book. It was called Chill Out and Get Healthy in 2010. And then based on everything I was seeing in my practice, I went ahead and I wrote my second book, which is called Yes, You Can Get Pregnant. And then it all changed from there. At that point, then I became, I was probably one of the first fertility coaches online, with an online program, back when that was all blowing up 15, maybe 10 years ago, I guess. He was a baby, so 7 to 10 years ago. Yeah, and then that's it. Now I only do fertility, and I work with women all over the world, and it's amazing.
So a couple of things you said are so on point with my personal fertility journey. You said something about in Chinese medicine. disease is just a byproduct essentially of emotions and like the emotions that are unregulated in your body. And so that's something I discovered about my fertility journey was, and it only came to light because I went to see this incredible osteopath.
Okay.
So that my MD recommended to me. And she, by the way, my MD, like, he was amazing. She's Harvard educated, and she fell into functional medicine because she looked at herself going through med school and she was not doing well. And she's like, what is going on here? So that was definitely a check for me. So she sent me to this osteopath in New York back in, I think it was November. And this woman said, your fertility is just as much caused by your belief systems in your mind as it is by your body.
Yeah.
And I said, what do you mean? She's like, walk me through the trauma you've been through.
Aww.
And I start going into it, and I had this terrible first marriage in my 20s. And I basically, the long and the short of it is, I was married, I got pregnant, the guy didn't want me to have a baby, dropped me off to have an abortion at 25 years old. And I told my body through that connection that it is not safe to be, being a mother is not safe. I'm giving up control to a man. My body does not belong to me anymore. So I almost forced my ovaries to start shutting down. Is there a medical side to it? Because I've had ovarian cysts and I've lost a lot of ovarian tissue. Yes. But she triggered that in me. She didn't know my history. No. She didn't know me from Adams. She just said there's something in you that you're not communicating with your body, and you're telling yourself it's not safe. So you're not letting a soul come through because you're literally telling yourself it is not safe to go through this experience.
And that's why the ovaries will shut down too. You know, a lot of the work we do, like now people were calling it like more nervous system work. We always just called it mental, emotional, or mind, body medicine. But a big thing you'll see is the body in fight or flight constantly, or is it in rest, relax, and reproduce? And when it's in fight or flight, the first thing in a woman's body is to shut down the reproductive system because it doesn't feel safe enough to procreate. And so you'll just see the downregulation of all the hormones and communication between the brain and the ovaries. And so they get quiet, I guess is a good way, but we can wake them back up, absolutely.
And talking about you can wake them back up, right? How are you doing that for some of your women coming through? Because I have a lot of women who follow me and write to me. It's like I've started this conversation with all these fertility warriors. There's such a big community. They write to me, I write to them. Yeah. You know, it's becoming exchanging, sharing information. So how does it, for a lot of us older women, maybe 35 kind of plus, I'm in my early 40s, how do you wake these ovaries
First, I want to say
up?
thank you, because one thing I always say to my girls is sharing lifts the shame. And so it makes me emotional. It's like the more we talk about it, the more people feel less alone and less isolated. So you being such an advocate in that department, thank you. No, honestly, it changes, like just this conversation, you know, how many people we're going to reach and help. It's amazing. So how do we wake ovaries back up? Yeah, I come at it now, like now I'm a seasoned practitioner, right? 20 years of clinical experience. I spent upwards of 12, 15 years seeing on average 60 patients a week. So I have a lot of clinical hours, lots and lots and lots of experience. I come at it from every angle. So I'm looking at nutrition, you know, I'm looking at, I guess, hot words, reducing inflammation. We're improving circulation and blood flow. So we're using acupuncture, we're using herbs, we're doing things like Mayan massage and pelvic floor PT, castor oil packs. We are maybe even like the red light therapy or even the ovarian PRP, which I know you've done.
We're gonna talk about, yeah.
We'll use Chinese herbs, and then my practice now, I have a functional medicine practitioner on my team. I also have a PhD psychotherapist. She's a trauma therapist. So we do real work. We do real work. We are not just coaches, and none of my coaches are just coaches, and there's nothing, you know, I'm not knocking anybody, but we're clinicians. We're seasoned clinicians. We all have at least 10 years of clinical experience seeing, you know, thousands of hours of clinical experience seeing patients like so many of our current patients. And so we're coming up with a plan. You know, we're doing functional medicine testing. We're looking at hormones. We're looking at stool. We do vaginal and uterine microbiome testing.
Yep. I just ordered a vaginal microbiome test right now.
The Fertility one? I don't want to.
I have to check which one it is that I just got one delivered to the house through a friend of mine who's a practitioner. She said, why don't you check your microbiome?
I tell you, it's a game changer. I'm a huge fan. I mean, now I'm bypassing a little bit. I'm a huge fan of Western medicine. I'll say that. And I'm a huge fan. My biggest, most favorite test for every woman to do is an endometrial biopsy and a hysteroscopy, which our close friend, Dr. Murphy, you know, kind of really showed me the importance of that years ago when we began working together. But so I'm always looking at sure, I'm looking at egg quality and I'm looking at the woman's health. And egg quality isn't just antioxidants, right? Or CoQ10. It really is ovarian and uterine blood flow is imperative to improving egg quality. And so that's how we're waking it back up. And then when we always have to think about sperm health, and then we always have to think about the house. We call it the child's palace in Chinese medicine, which is the uterus. And so those are the three pieces that we're constantly looking at. And then of course, in Chinese medicine, one of my most favorite things is it's a vessel that's called the bao mai. It connects the heart to the uterus. And so that's where all that trauma comes in, and it starts to kind of block up that vessel. And then there's lack of communication. And so the uterus and the ovaries just don't get that light or that joy. I mean, that's how we see it in Chinese medicine. So we're all about opening that up. And we do that through the mental emotional work. I wrote a book called Body Belief, all because of, our beliefs dictate our behavior dictates our health. And you can't ever separate that. And then there's a ton of neuroscience. There's placebo and nocebo research that just shows what people believe typically manifests.
Right.
Physiologically.
100%. And I was listening to another podcast. I think it was Lauren Bosnick from the Skinny Confidential. She was talking about she's on her third pregnancy, and somebody asked her, hey, have you had trouble? She's like, no, I've gotten pregnant every single time we've tried on the first go. And she's like, I'm not trying to be insensitive to other women. But she said, I tell myself all the time that my vessel is clean. It's ready to receive. It's ready to be a mom. And I invite that energy in. And I do have to say, the mind is so, so, so powerful. And there I was thinking, for myself, I see it from my own perspective. My cycles were not regular and nothing. And then when I started changing the narrative, obviously I'd done the PRP and stem cells that we'll talk about as well. It all started shifting and correlating that my body is starting to actually work with me now.
Yeah, you get into alignment. And I think that's the one downfall, I would say, of the Western medicine approach, is that they just look at everything under the belt and they judge you completely on your age, your FSH, and your AMH, and that is it. And that's just one part of the story. Yeah. And so most women make their way to someone like me or functional medicine is amazing as well. I mean, there's a reason I have a practitioner on my team now. I was going to go and study functional medicine. I was like, I can't fit that in my brain. I'm going to just hire someone. But it's the multifaceted approach is what I see working. Even if you're going to continue on IVF, I have no issue with IVF. Even going to donor eggs, no issue whatsoever. We still have to work on the uterine cavity, and we still have to work on your whole vessel. I mean, it's still so important.
100%. What are some of the, for people listening, for the women listening, what are some of the ways they can improve egg quality specifically? Because there's increasing egg quantity, and then there's egg quality.
Yeah. And I always say, I don't care so much about quantity. I think from an IVF perspective, it matters. More bang for your buck. However, there's plenty of doctors out there that are doing mini IVF or low stim IVF and working with women that have low reserve. So we're always thinking about quality. And to improve egg quality, I'm a firm believer in a nutrient-dense diet, good amount of protein, equally amounts of vegetables. I like a good range of 6 to 8 servings of vegetables a day, depending on your body and constitution. I'll generally say at least 80 grams of protein, but obviously that varies depending on the person and so many variables.
And how should women be getting in their protein? Because a lot of us, we just sometimes don't eat, get it all by our meals. Are you a fan of smoothies if it's clean?
Yeah. Chinese medicine, we don't like cold raw. Yes. So if we're doing smoothies, I'm recommending blanching the veg, not using frozen fruit, adding things like ginger and cinnamon to warm it up. Some even I like brothies, right, where we can add bone broth to the smoothie. Big fan of bone broth. And I was a fan of bone broth before bone broth was trendy. Chinese medicine, we've been talking about organ meats and bone broth for thousands of years. So I had girls on liver pills before there was 17 brands of them.
What is your favorite liver pill brand? Because I want to restart liver pills.
So right now, I mean, tried and true, I've always used Dr. Ron's. They're my favorite. Most of them, I have a supplement line with Dr. Murphy, so I've learned a lot. Yeah. Most of them source it from the same place. So any brand, as long as it's grass-fed, organic, and typically they come from New Zealand cattle, their liver. That's great. You can also eat liver. People love to make liver pate, chicken liver. I say about 3 ounces a week is the goal, or 1,500 milligrams a day. So I'll use supplements. I mean, things like CoQ10, obviously we know the research is there. They help. N-acetylcysteine I love, especially if there's endometriosis, myo-inositol. Not for every case. We really have to kind of make sure the woman needs it. Fish oil, I'm a big fan of good quality fish oil, obviously a good quality prenatal choline. And you've been talking about I love that Body Bio. Like that's my favorite phosphatidylcholine. I've recommended that forever. And you did something on it.
Yeah, and you know there's correlation for anybody listening that if you take choline while you're pregnant, your kid's brain develops better, and there's actually data to show there's actually data to show that kids who are on it from like when their mom is pregnant with them to so on when they're children, they are actually scoring so much higher at school and their grades and just their expansion. I think there's a special word or terminology of how
neurodiversity, maybe.
No. There's a special category these kids get into, some of them, with taking choline.
Wow.
I have to pull it up. I'll pull it up.
And it is like, I love food as medicine, right? So I'm always primary leading with food. But the truth is, and you know, we know this, and you've spent a lot of time on your podcast going to this, the food is so compromised, especially in the United States. So supplements are necessary, but there's so many crap supplements out there. So you have to really be careful. And I'm not, most girls come to me and they're on upwards of 20 supplements a day. My goal is to trim that down in half. It's like really get very specific, individualized. We look at genetics to see like, oh, do you need that? Do you need that? That kind of thing. Look at their, MTHFR, COMT, any of the mutations to help their body detox and methylate, so we take all of that into account. But kind of circling back, like egg quality it's nutrient density and diet, it's targeted supplements. Then, of course, the lifestyle stuff. I mean, you got to be sleeping. I think, and ideally, in Chinese medicine, we want you asleep before 11 o'clock. We want you sleeping 7 to 8 hours. I'm really into making sure your lights are, you're wearing your blue light glasses. We're getting morning sunlight first thing in the morning. All of that is so important for the nervous system and also that brain-ovarian communication, the hypothalamus, pituitary ovarian axis. And then what I think is one of the biggest issues is the endocrine disrupting chemicals. Yeah. And so we have to get rid of them.
Yeah, personal care products. That's why I also take a lot of Body Bio PC because it's amazing for leaching out environmental toxins and, phthalates and BPAs and all that stuff in your system. But I think that one of the things you touched upon, which is really important, is not every supplement is made the same.
That's right.
So you could be taking a CoQ10, it might not be from a really good company. So you
has
need
soybean oil in it.
Yeah,
Vitamin D has soybean oil in it. You got to read. Yeah.
You got to read. You need to make sure it's third-party tested. It's from a very reputable brand. Just because a brand is big on Instagram does not mean the brand is good.
Yeah, it just means they have money.
They just have money and they're VC backed and they're churning it out. Most prenatals, I realize, I'm a very big fan of like WeNatal. I've been taking theirs, but I've seen a lot of prenatal companies actually don't have the right amount dosage. The dosage of each of the ingredients is so low.
If you notice, my book, Yes, You Can Get Pregnant, which I wrote in 2013, it came out in 2014. I don't even have prenatals in the book. I actually have everyone doing spirulina, liver, cod liver oil, vitamin D, probiotic. That was kind of my general. But the reason, and people would come after me, of course, and be like, there's no prenatals in this book. And I was like, in 2014, every prenatal was absolute crap. It all had folic acid. Right. It didn't have choline. Now we have brands like WeNatal, This Is Needed, some great brands out there. Even like Theralogics makes a really great prenatal. Most of them, though, still don't have enough choline. So correct. I love the Thorne Basic Prenatal. I think it's a really good price point, and it's 1.7 of methylfolate. So it's like I love that dose, and then I'll go up if I need extra for somebody, and then I add in the choline.
Yeah. I just checked the Body Bio choline.
That's it. It's 1,500. I mean, I think you get 1,500 out of 2, which is a lot. You don't really need that much, but I'll do one of those a day. But yeah, the supplements that are out there, I think you have to be super cautious. I have everyone, when we do our intake, you have to come to that first session with a list of not just what you're taking, but I need exact doses and I need brands. Because I'll tell you right now, the CVS and the Costco brands.
Oh, no. That's not where you buy supplements, guys. So one place that you can, but you have to work with a practitioner, is Fullscript.
I love Fullscript
is incredible. Most practitioners build their protocols in there, go down, buy, you can subscribe, whatever needs to be done and dusted. So you're getting the best quality. Other places is go to the brand's actual website. Do not buy supplements on Amazon unless maybe they have a storefront forefront, but even then, there's a lot of black water channeling of supplements. That is a whole other industry.
Yeah.
So do not be buying supplements on Amazon.
Yeah, we send people directly to our full script. And it's nice because everybody gets a 20% discount. And I send people directly to Thorne because I like their Thorne supplements. Same thing, I extend the discount. And then, of course, I have a supplement line now that we did spend almost 2 years curating and formulating, and we hired a formulator. You know, most practitioners out there are private labeling already made supplements, claiming them to be their own, which when someone approached me, so, you know, I have the supplement line with Dr. Murphy, who you know, and then my other good friend, we went to graduate school together, Mark Sklar, and he's in the same, he's like the male version of me is what I always say. He's in the same space. And the three of us got together and, you know, Mark said, let's do a supplement line. And I said, I will not white label anything. Like we were gonna, you know, and you pay, you pay up and then years of pre-testing before you can launch to market. But we have one for eggs, we have one for sperm, and we have one for DNA repair. So what we're doing now is most of our clients are doing Rejuva, eggs and repair, or he's doing sperm and repair. And then we're adding in, you know, I don't even think you necessarily need a prenatal. We're adding in the methylfolate, we're adding in the choline, fish oil, probiotic, vitamin D if you need it, because there's vitamin D in the supplements. And that's another thing too that we should touch upon. D is so important. It's actually not a vitamin, it's a hormone. So, and talk about choline, like without D and choline, our hormones, our sex hormones are just, they're offline.
And can I just say that most people don't even know that? When you go to these, and we're going to get into this later, when you go to a lot of these like standard of care fertility doctors, they're not even bothering to check for this stuff.
They don't look at your thyroid.
Insane.
They don't look at your D. They tell you need to have 3 miscarriages before they do any further inspection. They will not do a hysteroscopy, again, unless you've had multiple miscarriages or multiple failed implantation of genetically tested normal embryos.
What do you think of unexplained infertility, and why is it so common in conventional medicine?
I can curse, right? I think...
Here you go. Of course you can curse. No. It's like everybody's like, unexplained. Of course you can curse.
It's a bullshit diagnosis. It's a lazy diagnosis. It's somebody not doing their due diligence. Half these girls are coming to us. No one's even done a thyroid panel in 2 years. No one's looked at semen ever. No one's looked at vitamin D levels. You know, a complete thyroid panel is necessary. Most women with fertility challenges have something else going on. And similar to what we said in the beginning, and their body is saying, I cannot prioritize this because I have this to figure out. And so that's my job. I figure this out and then I help them, then they come back online. And sometimes it is all emotional. Sometimes it is just so much gaslighting and trauma that they are just shut down and they're scared, and we have to help them feel safe again, right? I have girls that are like, no, I will never get my FSH tested again. I can't read that number. And then I'm like, okay, I want you to go and you can share the labs with me, but also I don't really care. Okay, you don't want to go? We don't go. You know, you don't have to do what you don't want to do. But unexplained infertility, you know, I'd say all the time has an explanation. It's never unexplained. It's a thyroid condition. It's a low-lying autoimmune condition. It's vitamin D deficiency. It's celiac. It's, you know, it's, when I was writing Yes, You Can Get Pregnant, I interviewed 2 doctors for the book. Dr. Hugh Taylor, I don't know if he's still there, but he used to run Yale Reproductive Medicine. And then Dr. Janelle Luke, I didn't know Murray at the time. And Dr. Braverman declined, and he's now passed, which is sad because I miss him. But they both, I remember interviewing Dr. Taylor, and I said, you know, I'm doing a lot of research for the book, and I said the most common reasons are endometriosis or PCOS. That's why we're having all these fertility challenges. And then there's this unexplained. And I said, but do you think most unexplained is just an undiagnosed autoimmune condition? And he says to me, it's in the back of the book, the interview. He says to me, you know, he's older than me. He was like, young lady, you are onto something. He said, we screen every single patient right now for celiac and for Hashimoto's. And he was ahead of the time. That's, you know, that's over 10 years ago. And they were looking, you know, if you will, under the hood and doing their detective work and then realizing there's so many, you know, and it's not normal for a woman's AMH to be super low even into her early 40s. That's just not normal.
Well, I'm going to talk about that. Well, I was going to bring this up later, but my AMH in August, before I did the stem cells and the PRP for the ovaries, was 0.088.
Offline. You were just offline.
And Going to be
And then
42.
the first thing I would also think about with that at your age is I'd want to rule out endometriosis, because endometriosis is like cobwebs. It grows on the inside, and it's estrogen responsive, and it's a systemic inflammatory condition that most of the time kind of like locks back the ovaries, and it compromises blood flow to them. And so we're seeing these really low AMHs.
How does somebody know if they have endometriosis? I haven't
hard.
so far been diagnosed with. How would I check?
Pelvic MRI or laparoscopic surgery, or you can do tests like Dr. Vidali, who was with Braverman Reproductive Immunology. They've now he started something called Pregmune, and it's blood work that you pay for, and most insurances unfortunately don't cover a lot of it. It's very extensive blood work that looks into immunological factors and inflammatory factors, and we can kind of make an assumption based on markers, whether or not you have it. Fertility also has that uterine microbiome test that I use. They also have an inflammation index, and they also have a similar test to Pregmune that we look at things like natural killer cells or Th1 to Th2 ratios. There's cytokines. There's things that lead us to believe.
So I have this incredible, the one I told you, my functional medicine doctor in Morristown, New Jersey. And
Which is where I grew up, by the way.
Really?
I grew up in West Milford, like
Maybe
2
you know
towns
her,
over.
Christine Perfetta. She used to go by the Gedrick Institute, but it's Dr. Christine Perfetta. She's phenomenal. She is like being this underground kind of secret that now, started coming out, being on social, all that stuff. She's helped a lot of really, really famous people like reverse completely their Lyme diagnosis. And she says like MS is sometimes a bullshit diagnosis. You're not checking for certain Lyme markers. Ones that you check, the 3 standard ones are not the ones. So she just ran a bunch of my blood work. She's been working with me on inflammation, and inflammation caused through one old mold exposure. And we knew it was old because it would ended up in my organs. So it was like dated kind of. And then she is also checking now for like, obviously I have certain like phthalates in my system that are trying to get out, BPAs, I had nickel that was really high, certain metals, but she's running that. I'm going to send you those results.
Send me those results.
Yeah.
And then we could just ask her to throw in a couple. But yeah, we could probably piece it together a little bit. There's also really clear signs. Most women, they come to me and they say my HSG was really painful, like so painful they like threw up or they almost passed out. That's the hysterosalpingogram where they run the dye through the tubes. That's number one sign, endometriosis. I have pain with sex, endometriosis. I have lightning bolt kind of pain with bowel movements near my period, endometriosis, and some would be like, you can't diagnose over a podcast, and I know I can't, but like
no, but
those
I'm
are
asking. Yes,
those are my like
signs.
my antlers go way up.
Yeah. And what about FSH being super high? Is it the same thing?
Not necessarily. So it's typically the picture is AMH is really low, FSH, and maybe even antral follicle count. Well, antral follicle count's probably low, but FSH is probably normal-ish, maybe teens. Estrogen will be high typically in the endo patients.
I have estrogen like dominance, like toxic estrogens.
And
I'm
so,
taking things like Brock shot and a few other things
like
to kind of circulate it out of my body.
Be careful with like DIM and calcium D-glucarate only because they will lower estrogen too much, and then that can throw FSH off, right? Estrogen and FSH are interdependent on each other. So when one's low, the other one goes high and vice versa.
So no DIM, you're saying?
I wouldn't do DIM.
Okay.
If I have to do it, like I'll run, obviously I do Dutch and I'm doing labs on my patients. If I need it, I do it 1 month. And then everything else is the sulforaphane. So the Bracco shot,
So maybe I should just do that because I am on DIM. Maybe I should go off that and
we'll drop it.
It's amazing. And then what about this whole thing about egg quality and the biological clock? I want to talk about that.
Yeah. So, I like to really bust this because I think the story out there is women over age of 35, basically they have, I think, a 66% chance of conceiving in a year is what they tell you, or that, 2/3 of your eggs are good. 33% are bad. And then the way they say it, though, too, is, over the age of 35, there's this fertile cliff that you fall off of. But what I would love to say to everyone is the next time someone says that to you, ask them for their data. I would like to read that research paper that you read that gave you that information. To my knowledge, most practitioners are taking data from their clinics, right? And I guess we could say I do the same. So fine. And then they're making an assumption. But most clinics, that, outside of like Murphy, and there's a few others, Dr. Aimee too, are not working with a lot of women over 42, I would say. So they just kind of say, we have a less than 5% chance each month or a 1% chance. But also remember that 5% chance each month, 5 times 12, 60% chance of conceiving in a year. So please remember that. It really changes the conversation that you're having. What I know, and I have this like in my link tree on Instagram, I have it linked out, this research paper. There was one research paper which he looked at 20,000 eggs, not embryos. So they were not fertilized eggs. These were eggs collected in the process of doing IVF. The women were aged 38 to 45, I think, or the average age was 38. And I've done posts on this. What they found was, yes, under 35, about 80% of your eggs are still chromosomally normal. Then 35 to 38, I think it goes to about 70-ish%. And then 40 to 42, 38 to 40, somewhere in there, you're at like 65% of your eggs are still chromosomally normal. So 35% are not. And then the 43 plus category, because he didn't go higher than that in the research paper, it was still about 40, I would say 40 to 60% of your eggs are actually still good. And then if we take that information, and then we also take the information that we know that even women in menopause, so this means you have not menstruated at all in over a year, your FSH is high, you still have 1,000 eggs dormant in your ovaries. So I like to play with the numbers with my girls. Okay, so you're 42. And even if we just err on the side of caution, you have 2,000 eggs left, 3,000 eggs left. Let's also err on the side of caution, 50% of them are good. Of course, we got to find them and we got to fertilize them. But like, let's play with, like, it's like talking about belief systems. I just like to shift it of like, yes, miracles happen all the time. You are worthy of them. You are a miracle. Like, so anyway, I don't like the data and the numbers. And then also there's a big difference between biological age and chronological age, or physiological age and chronological age. So let's focus on that. How old do you feel,
Mm-hmm. And what quantifies, like what is an FSH that makes you menopausal?
I just heard a doctor tell a woman her FSH was 22 and he told her she was in menopause. And I was like, no, I get concerned when I'll see it maybe above a 50 or a 70, definitely in the hundreds. However, when was it taken? So many times they're like, say when you were having your irregular cycles.
I had 20.
And say you were on like cycle day 60, you hadn't had a period, and then you go into the doctor and he's like, well, we got to test your FSH, or she's like, we got to test your FSH. They test it, it comes back at like a 70, right? They're going to be like, you're in menopause. A, it was tested at the wrong time. So B, let's just restore your cycle. And then let's test it on cycle day 2 the way it's supposed to be tested and look at it in relation to estrogen. If estrogen is lower than a 50 and FSH is elevated, that's not a true read. We need estrogen between a 50 and an 80. Usually it's nanograms per milliliter, but just 50 to 80 for girls in the US. And then FSH, sure, below a 15. But I've had girls at 50, 60, 70, and we just get it down. I had girls with, similar AMHs to you. It's non-existent. And it comes back online.
Right.
And then perimenopause, everybody lasts 7 to 10 years, as long as you're still menstruating and ovulating. And even if you're not, I feel like half of my work is just perimenopausal work because I'm helping women in their 40s. We're just restoring function.
Right. And we've talked about the subconscious mind and self-worth, like having this mindset of, am I worthy enough, right? In your practice, are you like also pairing these people to do mental exercises at home, to do meditations? Like how are they approaching it?
So, like I said, we have our PhD trauma psychotherapist on our team. So women who work with us, I basically just run one thing now. We have some one-on-one coaching that we allow or that we offer. But most all our clients are entering into, we have a 6-month program, and you get an hour and a half of one-on-one time with Samantha, Dr. Sam. And then she also runs groups. So we do a lot of group coaching, and that's where we're really kind of unpacking these beliefs. And then of course, meditations, lifestyle practices, right? So everyone's different. So not everyone can sit and meditate. I know I go through phases in my life where sometimes my meditation is walking in nature and listening to a podcast, right? Sometimes it's journaling. Sometimes it's singing and dancing. It's just something for the nervous system. So yeah, the mental health piece is tremendous. I was listening to a podcast the other day. I don't think it was one of yours, but anyway, they were saying, I think it was Dr. Aimee on here, where she was like, we try to help, so you're more resilient, I guess is a good word, less fragile, that when you get the news, your AMH is that it doesn't, that it's just one piece of the puzzle. So almost like I'm a big Abraham Hicks student, and she will always say, like, we're going to talk you off the ledge. So, like, whatever that looks like. But we do a lot of belief work. We rewrite our stories. We kind of, and I always say it's not about going from, like, black to white, that, like, I'm infertile and I'll never get pregnant, to, like, sunshine and rainbows, my baby's coming tomorrow. But more like in the middle of, like, hey, Amy's worked with women my age, or other women my age have done it. Why can't I? Or other women with my FSH or my AMH or my diagnosis. So there's still a shot. And I always say to them, and even with the knowledge you have and the diagnosis, are you going to close the door? Is that it? You done with the journey? And usually they'll, no. I'm like, all right. So then let's own the fact that you still have hope. Yeah. Let's just own that, whatever that looks like. And it's going to change every day. And it's, fertility challenges are mercurial, but the mental health piece is tremendous. And so I also try to get them to focus on, I made all these dietary changes, and, like, look at my hair, look at my skin, look at my nails. I'm pooping every day. My sleep is the most restful. Let's celebrate the small wins along the way. Yeah.
And I was going to ask you, chronic stress obviously, like, plays a huge role in kind of like your balance of your hormones and reproductive health. Now, you look at me online, I have a really, really busy life. Like, I genuinely am super busy. But at the same time, my baseline has always been pretty busy.
Yeah.
And I'm not, like, mad or aggravated. I'm pretty happy. 95% of the time, I'm really upbeat. I'm really excited about life. I do get a really good quality sleep, but I've had women approach me online on Instagram being like, maybe if you just quit your job, maybe you just stop working. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. I try not to approach it that way, even, like, with alcohol and caffeine, and I'll get backlash on the internet about that, where I'm like, you can live a life that involves those things and still be able to get pregnant. You should be able to. I feel like that's unfair that we would have to take that from you.
Yeah.
But I do like to say of like alcohol is a good example. Of course, we limit it, we minimize it, but are you, like, milking the joy out of it? And that's how I would approach it with work. And then I also like to plant this seed of, like, what is life going to look like with a baby? Yes. How are you going to move through your world? Think about that now. Like, so are there a couple things that you might cut out? Like, and also just get into that space of, like, I want this all to be like a hell yes versus a maybe. And I definitely don't want to say yes to the no's,
It's definitely a hell yes. And I feel like when the baby comes, I will be creating, and I am starting to create more room in my life and prioritize it. And my life is so abundant, touch wood, in so many different ways. That's a mindset I have. Yeah. And people have said I've had except for a couple of teary moments, my fertility journey is, to me personally, it's not an easy journey, but it's been pretty upbeat for me because I'm discovering so much about myself along the way. I'm not pitying myself. I feel that when I'm going to look back in life, this has happened to me because I had to uncover certain things that were unprocessed and were not serving me, and it was just part of what I was meant to experience.
And then also that you're, I see it as also you're using it as an act of service to help and support others.
Yes.
And that's a beautiful thing. And so I agree. And so I think you stay in that space. And then if ever there comes a point where, of course, you're doing all the labs and all the testing. I'd look if your cortisol was off or things like that, super low, super high. I don't even think I'd say, like, quit your job. I would just be like, get more morning sunlight, make sure the lights are different at night, like the blue light blockers, like all of that stuff. And just, like, add in one thing every day that, like, lights your soul up. Or maybe there's a dance party with your husband every night, something like that to just, like, bring more joy. But I don't think you have to. I love...
Stop living your life.
Yeah, you can't. And then what happens there? Then it's like you're so resentful. And then even the dietary stuff, how many women are like, but I love these things. And I'm like, I just want you to eat. I don't need you to cut out gluten and dairy for the rest of your life. And sometimes not at all. It depends on the client and the patient. But let's choose better quality ones. Let's, like, think about how we're nourishing. And then same thing. How am I going to feed my family? So start doing that now.
Yep. Yeah. I, for example, our meat is all sourced from farms.
Yes.
For red meat, it's grass-fed and grass-finished. Completely organic. Poultry is, again, cage-free, organic. Eggs, same thing. And then I love dairy. I love raw dairy.
Yeah, I heard that on a podcast.
Yeah,
I'm
a huge raw dairy proponent. I love it. It works well for me. I feel good on it. Yeah. And is this true? I did speak to once, I think she was a fertility dietitian out of the UK, and she said milk is like fertilizer to the eggs. So when you're going through your IVF journey or something, in that stage when you're when you're getting, your injections and before your retrieval, milk acts like a fertilizer to your actual eggs. Have you heard of that?
No, but I just think about the fat. It's the fat. So not everybody can do dairy. So I don't want women to feel like, I I can't do it. And so I don't get the fertilizer. I think bone broth could do that. I think avocados could do that. Ghee, coconut oil, avocado oil. Like you just want, eggs are, the outer layer of eggs is fat.
Right.
And what happens when they age is they get more like fragile, and then when the sperm comes in, it abnormally fertilizes, right? And so I want lush eggs. So the milk, definitely, if you can digest it well and you have a good quality source, 100% it could be a part of your life.
And I literally have slabs of butter.
Yeah,
I literally... Jackie
eats
knows
so
this.
much butter.
She comes over, I'm just like, butter? And she's like, are you having that whole slab? And I'm like, I love butter.
I love butter.
Again, by the way, guys listening, you can tell the difference between American butter that's not organic and, kind of grass-fed versus European butter that is. And you can see your butter should actually be very yellow. The whiter the butter it is, the lower quality it is. Right. Your butter is supposed to be yellow. Like that's how you can tell it's really good quality butter.
And I love ghee too. In fact, like
amazing.
I put ghee on my skin. It's like my skincare.
Delicious.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And tallow.
And tallow.
Good quality
love
tallow. Yeah.
Playing with a new product with tallow. Yeah.
What are some of the most common hormonal imbalances affecting fertility? What is most common these days? Like what are you seeing hormone-wise?
I mean, thyroid is really common. Vitamin D deficiency, because I know people that is a hormone, not a vitamin.
What do you think of DHEA?
Yeah, I agree with what others have told you. I test, and if it's low, I give you a little bit. 10 milligrams micronized DHEA, not forever. I definitely do not like this 25 3 times a day. The research on that, again, was like really small and from one person's clinic, and then...
Well, I heard what happened to that person's clinic.
Yes.
So can we talk about that? Like about the...
Yeah, it was, it's like a lot of it out there, unfortunately. It's like a misrepresentation, of the information. You have to pay attention. Like, too much DHEA is going to make a woman really testosterone-y, and facial hair, and her voice is going to change. And testosterone's bad for the eggs. We need DHEA and testosterone for egg quality, but not too much. So we have to test. I always look at DHEA-S, and I always look at free testosterone, and then I make decisions.
Right. And yeah, that's why I was taught, I was taking DHEA because some of the functional community, this is the problem with American medicine, right? You have the traditional medicine community that's not willing to hear anything outside, which is experimentative, which the field of medicine has moved forward because of experimentation. That's how it works. Then you basically on top of that have this whole second thing, which is the functional community is not fully versed in the fertility stuff, and the fertility doctors are sometimes not really versed with the functional community. So there's a miscommunication, kind of disconnect happening over there. So a lot of the functional community recommends DHEA. And when I started getting onto my fertility journey, Mary and Aimee were like, get the hell off that, like as of yesterday. And it wasn't Christine Perfetta who put me on, it was somebody else. And they said to me, get off it because it is actually destroying your eggs. Yeah, like you need to get off it and I don't want you touching it. Yeah. And I chucked it out because at the time I was kind of on it, but that's why different phases require different things.
That's it. And I think test, don't guess. Like, that's where I am. Yes, I'm an alternative medicine practitioner. I'm holistic. I'm a little woo-woo-y. I'm also we need to test. We need to test and we need to know what we're dealing with. And then we make decisions moving forward. And it's going to change. And too much DHEA, I was taking it too. And, I'm past having more children, but, supporting my hormones as I'm getting older. And I started getting pimples. And it's so funny. So then I haven't had pimples since like grad school, since I changed my diet 20, 30 years ago. Yeah. And tested, and sure enough, my testosterone's low, which is interesting, but my DHEA was high. And so I had to stop taking that, and then, I'm going to work with my functional medicine practitioner to do what I need to do. To balance it out.
Hormone replacement therapy, yes, no?
Yes, totally, 100%.
Bioidentical, guys, not synthetic. Just be very clear about that.
Yes.
So I was...
And test, don't guess.
And test, yeah. Dr. Aimee put me on estrogen patches.
Totally.
Which worked really well for me. She had sent me the progesterone pill, but I didn't need it. She's like, don't touch it. Your body's... ovulating naturally. And that's what I want to get into, how I even got. So my level, I'll read this to you, basically. I have them here. So my level of AMH back, like I said, in August was 0.088. And in January it was 0.24. My FSH went from 23.52 in August. In January, coming down to a 3.9.
And then I would love to know what estrogen was. That would be my next question if we were working together.
Jackie, we better send her my estrogen after.
Yeah. And day 3, day 2, that's it.
And so the other thing is I want to talk about something that I did, and we're going to get into why. One, I'm a very big believer in alternative way of looking at the fertility industry. So IVF, the industry literally just started 40 years ago, right? It began in 1917 with the birth of the first test tube baby, Louise Brown, in 1978. So the industry is actually only 45 years old.
And they did not use Follistim or Gonal F on her. I think they were using Clomid.
Thank you. And now even there's some stuff about Clomid that they're like, hey, there's other stuff.
Yeah, letrozole is better.
But my
for
point
most.
is, the industry has only moved forward because of experimental testing. If there was no experimentation, the industry would
hell
never
would we know?
fucking move forward, pardon my
it.
French. And so...
Like vitrification, think about that. Like we were losing eggs and embryos all the time until this Japanese guy figured out a better way to freeze the eggs, freeze the embryos. We were doing fresh transfers. Now we see better results with frozen. Like, how did we know that? Because we experimented.
Right. And so I'm going to talk about something that you and I experienced online last week. But so PRP for fertility, let's talk about it in your standpoint and in your research that you're seeing. Overhyped or revolutionary? For me, it's being revolutionary.
I think. So PRP stands for Platelet-Rich Plasma, and it's been used for a long time for joint pain, for hair regrowth, where they're drawing your blood and then they centrifuge it and they take the platelets, which are kind of like golden, yellowy, and then they take the platelets and then they inject it into the area that needs it. It's basically your body's own growth factor. So if you're thinking about like girls are using human growth hormone for IVF, HGH, the way Murray has described it to me, he's like, why would I use human growth hormone that's coming from, I think, animals like horses or something like that, versus your own growth factors, which is your PRP, your platelets. He started doing it, I think, it was right after COVID, right? So however many years ago that was, I don't even remember anymore. But he was the only guy doing it, and people were very, very speculative of it.
But there's so much research coming out of Greece.
Well, that's no.
They've been
so
doing it for years.
The Greek guys always do. So sorry, he's the first guy doing it
in the US. But people think it's crazy. But Greece has incredible research that I was in Greece last summer when I decided to start my fertility journey. I spoke to Pathos, which is one of the top fertility doctors, who's actually leading the research for PRP and now getting into stem cells.
Yeah, and so what I always say to my girls, I say a few things, but like one, I mean, if you do it with like Murphy or even Dr. Aimee, we're looking at a few $1,000s, which in the whole scheme of things with doing IVF, not a significant amount of money.
100%.
I know it's a lot of money, but
and it gives you better success with IVF.
But that's it. So A, you have nothing to lose. B, I've not seen negative. I've never seen it backfire. Sometimes I say the ovaries can go into hiding for like a month or two, where it's almost like a little assault on them, where they're a little like, what just happened, you know? But I would say, and this is what I generally say, and I look at Murphy's research, and I think it's generally what he's seeing too, and I don't know Amy's, but I think it's about the same. It's working for 50% of the women, 50. That's significant. So even in that one study that our friend quoted, you know, I don't think she realized that she actually said that it improved, you know, I think the antral follicle count went from 3 to 5. And I'm like, for some of those women, those two extra eggs are so significant. Those are babies.
But so I'm going to back in here because people get confused. So
I know.
I had a situation online that I'm going to go into. So this is what happened to me. I was actually on my way to dinner. I was actually going to dinner with a bunch of the Kennedy team. It's funny that why this comes up. So I was in the car and I get a text from, I'm so blessed. I'm friends with so many incredible fertility doctors and people in the space. I get 2 fertility doctors texting me. They're like, hey, could you check your text message? And I look into it and they're like, look at this reel. This reel is literally my content with my podcast, Biohack-it, on it, with a clip from a podcast with Mary that this other fertility doctor, Dr. Lucky Saikon, took without my permission. It is my intellectual property, stitched it, and then shat basically on my fertility doctor and a procedure that I had gotten done that I was talking about in my personal content on my podcast.
Yeah. And what she did though, which most of us have done it. We try not to do it. She cherry picked the data. Yeah. And so she said she cuts the reel, fertility stitch incoming, and then, fertility doctor stitch, right? So she doesn't even freaking tag Murray, which also pissed me off. Yeah. But it doesn't even give him credit that he's actually a reproductive endocrinologist who does research all the time. I mean, he's a brilliant man who also is friends with her boss. You should have done a little homework, but that's that. She cherry picks the data, and she doesn't fully represent the whole picture. And she also doesn't say, I think the biggest thing that upset me is okay, there's 2 sides to it. Is it working for everyone? No.
But that's nothing. IVF doesn't work for everybody.
Acupuncture doesn't work for everyone. Like everybody loves acupuncture. There's all this research showing, yes, it improves IVF success rates, but it's not a shoe-in for every single person. But also, PRP is done differently for everybody too. So we're not looking at a randomized control. We're just not. It's not RCT at this point. So what she does though, she cherry picks the data and she doesn't present the whole picture. And she also, what I think bothered me the most, and it's the same thing she did when she came after me, she gave no opportunity for the person she was
attacking,
defaming and attacking to come and speak their side. And how do we move forward? We have healthy debates. That's it. You don't have to agree with my interpretation of the data. You don't have to agree with how I approach things. But let me at least have the opportunity to speak. And no, what she does is she blocked them before she does the post. So it was very thoughtful what she did. And
she does this to a lot of people. So I wrote on her content right away. I wrote on the reel.
And I have screenshots of everything.
And I do too. And I keep receipts. So I said, hey, this is my content that you've used without my permission. You've not tagged me in the post. And secondly, you're gaslighting me. I'm one of his patients who's had the experience with the procedure. I did the PRP. I've had great results from it. So you're going to gaslight my experience and tell me my experience was not valid?
That's right.
That does not speak to your science when I have data and research to show otherwise, and my body's ovulating. I wasn't even ovulating.
And it's anecdotal, but like after a while, when you start to see all the anecdotes line up and they all are showing the same thing, that's when it's significant. So it's when you first started doing it, and even you did the adipose and you did the stem cell, which is a little different than the regular. But even that, like I watched for a year, and he's one of my closest friends and colleagues. I watched for a year before I was like, shoo in, guys, you should be doing this. You know what I mean? Because I was like, let's just see. I just want to see the data. And I have seen countless women like you have their numbers change dramatically. Their antral follicle count goes up. If they weren't previously making blastocysts, they start making blastocysts. Like we're getting more eggs, we're making more embryos.
Correct.
Who wouldn't want to do that?
But at the end of the day, I want to bring in another thing to fertility. Fertility is a personal journey. You have a choice about how you choose to navigate it. I am somebody who is alternative, experimentative, and holistic. That is just me always as a person. I decided to approach it this way. How dare any other person tell me how to navigate my fertility journey and what I choose to share, not share about it on my platform. When I asked this woman to either take down the content or give it credit, she instead responded, and I literally have this written out, I wouldn't expect an RFK supporter, conspiracy theorist to appreciate good science.
And she put quotes on it.
Yeah, and she put quotes on it, and then she literally had a peace sign. And I was like, well...
And then she deleted both.
Yes, but I have all this.
I know.
And then on top of that, I had even said to her, hey, you can either credit it or at least let the doctor respond that you blocked. She blocks me instead. And then I get all of these DMs, guys. I get so many DMs.
Yeah, that's what I want to hear
I'm going to read one DM, and it turned out to be a really good friend of mine in Dubai. And this is, I literally took the screenshot out. She said, oh my, I had a terrible consult with this woman. So happy to know it's not just me, because everyone speaks so highly of her, and I had this terrible experience with her. And I responded, and she said, honestly, I was shocked. So many of my friends in New York spoke highly of her, and I went in and I was left so disheartened. I saw her last year for a consult, and we were considering surrogacy, and immediately she said I had to go to the egg donor route, which I didn't have to end up doing, because she didn't even bother asking me about the process I wanted to do, or even talk about how she would go about getting embryos from my eggs. So I ended up with a different doctor, and now we're in the process of conceiving.
Good for her.
This is a person I actually know. Somebody else sent, I have like tons of messages. Another person sent to me. I have a few friends who have used her clinic and have had terrible like success stories, and they've had to go 2, 3, 4 times, and it makes no more sense for them, and they're not clear. That's right. I have so many of these messages.
I've seen. We tend to see the people who have left her practice because they weren't getting the results. And also, I think, I think she's trying to do her service, if you will, in the way she thinks it's necessary. But she's not for everyone.
She's not, but also I think like she boasts about certain things about success rates, but I've also heard from people who DM me at pages of this stuff, who have literally DM'd me saying they literally, because their case was difficult, because she does not like difficult cases, because she can't boast about it, then she turns them away, and they end up with, whether it's yourself, Mary, or a bunch of other fertility doctors I know in New York, and I'm friends with these guys, so it's all coming in. Not just that, I had fertility doctors who were in group chats with her and other doctors who sent me screenshots of how she was annihilating Dr. Mary and all of this stuff. I have all of these things. And then the best, I'll put the icing on the cake. Then she sends, I call them her little minions, after me on Instagram, and they come in and they're like, well, she's a content creator. No, bitch, you're a doctor. You are not a content creator.
Don't be an influencer.
I'm not a content creator. No. I'm a business owner, and I own 2 businesses, right? I'm not even a wellness influencer. Right. I own a PR marketing agency. I'm a host of a podcast. Right. I create educational content as part of those 2 pillars. I don't look at myself as a content creator. I don't have time to do dances on TikTok on like trendy themes all day. I run 2 businesses. And the fact that these women, there's her and there's a few of them, troll patients, troll practitioners, troll colleagues is so highly unprofessional. It was shocking to me. And you can go and read the reviews from some of this clinic. It is not the most positive stuff. So then I had to basically go, Aimee, right on the clinic's page. And I said, if your practitioner does not remove my content that she's using, which is my intellectual property, without my permission, I will be sending you a legal notice. And yes, then they removed it. But I was just sitting there thinking to myself, what sort of delusional, narcissistic woman is this who lacks basic empathy? And by the way, when you look at her comment section and women actually ask her a question that's not... No, she either blocks them or is really dismissive or arrogant towards them. And when these women came to me in the DMs, I was like, firstly, she can practice how she wants in her clinic. I'm not going attacking her. I'm not telling people that I don't agree with how she practices. That is a choice of a patient who wants to work with her. But what she doesn't have the right to do is gaslight other patients, so other doctors, defame other colleagues, and call it the science.
I know. And she's doing a disservice to her profession because she's creating a divide rather than saying, like, it was even, you know, when she came after me over some research
let's talk
that
about
I had seen.
let's talk about what she did to you, because she targeted you as well.
Yeah, her whole clan, right? So Dr. Jen Gunther, Babies After 35, which is Shannon,
who was
something
another.
or other. And then Lucky, I did a post and it said something of, you are not running out of eggs. And then it was a slide and I cited research, and they took my post, and then all three of them, all on their feeds, you know, they did like, you know, green screens with my post behind it, and they went to my website. They totally defamed my character, my education, my clinical expertise, my books. And what was so upsetting to me was I was actually just sharing data that I'd read in a research paper, and another blogger had actually done like a really nice piece on it. And so I quoted her as well. But she's a medical researcher, is the blogger. The research is, I think there's over 80 research papers dating back to the early 2000s that has documented data. 12 of them are on humans, and so the rest on animals. But also I'll add that, you know, the first data that came out about us running out of eggs, it was never done on humans. It was done on rhesus monkeys and rats. And it was in the 60s, and no one could tested it for 40 years. And so now these researchers, and most of the research is done by Jonathan Tilley. I think he's at Southwestern or Northwestern, I'm forgetting, but he's the head of one of their biology departments. And he's showing that there are these stem cells in the ovaries, and they can be activated. And so the argument is, are we really born with a finite number of eggs, and are we always running out of them? And like, I never was arguing that we don't decline with age and we can't make sperm, you know, into our 70s and 80s and 90s like men can. I never said that anywhere, but that's where they took it. They like totally moshed my words.
But that's what they
do.
That's
what they do. And they bullied me. It was just nasty. And talk about the DMs. But same thing. I got DMs in support of me. I got DMs against me. And I offered to go on and debate her. She blocked me. Yeah. I was like, let's go on and just talk about the research. And I knew Dr. Copperman, and I emailed him directly. That's her boss.
Who's her director, yeah.
And I said, listen, she's allowed to disagree with my interpretation of the research.
Absolutely.
She's allowed to question it, but she's not allowed to defame my character. And then we sent
online.
We sent a cease and desist as well to her, to Shannon.
And can I ask you, so many of these doctors are getting cease and desist about what they're doing, but isn't it so unprofessional? In my industry, if I did that to another professional,
same.
It would just be appalling. And these are colleagues.
Well, it's lack of integrity, too.
And then I have to tell you another funny thing. So when I started my whole IVF journey and stuff, I wanted to introduce some of the best fertility doctors, and I still am, which is why you're sitting here, you're a fertility specialist. So I made it my mission to look for people, research them. And this was very early on. This is like September-ish, I would say, when I started. I said, I'm going to bring on fertility experts. Yeah. I had originally found her page, not having known her content and stuff, and I was going to New York to film, so Jacqueline basically reaches out to people. We'd gone out to her. There are 2 emails, and I literally have the emails here because I really do keep receipts. So Jacqueline had gone out and said, hey, Mom's going to be in New York these days. I had Brian Levine, who I adore, also on my podcast. I'm really good friends with Brian. And she had agreed. Jacqueline does all the outreach. I don't even look at it anymore. And so she'd gone out and she confirmed her, and then Lucky had to cancel last minute. Whatever, no skin off her back. We don't care. And then I started following Lucky's content, and I said, wait, I don't agree with the kind of content she's producing. I don't agree with the way she's approaching patients. I have a very different viewpoint on this. And I remember telling Jacqueline, don't go back out to this woman. I don't agree with her approach. Let's not feature her. It doesn't make sense. Her minions literally came after me. They're like, we knew you wanted her on your podcast and she rejected you. And I'm like, what she could show up.
Oh my gosh.
There were 2 emails. I have the emails here. And I was laughing to myself and I was like, and you think I care? She didn't come on. She said she had a migraine and we just never contacted her again. And then they were like, oh, it's because you got burnt. Burnt by what? $200 studio fee?
No, that's
are
hysterical.
Like, this is the nitpicking that they
that's
do,
the level
right?
of, like, she's not an evolved human. And that's the level of
lack of
person,
empathy. And I just
you're
think to
dealing
myself,
with.
you know, I feel really bad for the patients that she has who she probably gaslights. I also saw this clip of this really big influencer who did a retrieval with her. Influencer does the retrieval, comes out of the retrieval. It was the influencer and a friend of the influencers. And Lucky Saikon comes out and the woman is obviously still a little like, you know, drugged up. She's the influencer. Is like, how did I do, Dr. Lucky? And Lucky's talking about her scrubs instead. This is a clip. I can literally show it to you after. She's talking about her scrubs and how she wishes there were cuter scrubs. And I'm like, the girl is asking you how her retrieval went.
Yeah.
And she's like, instead of even answering it, she kind of like roundabout was like, well, I just want to say you guys are lucky that you coordinated all your appointments together. And I'm like, there's no love, there's no warmth, there's no, and fertility is one of the most vulnerable journey a woman goes on, right?
It's so hard. And that's like, and to the point too of she's out there, you know, trying to serve and spread information as well.
Yeah.
But and like, I think we could see it as misinformation, but like, I feel for the woman out there who is vulnerable and doesn't know who to trust.
And false suspect to this kind of content.
False suspect, but also, you know, then all of a sudden, it creates this divide and this like anger, and then there's these attacks and backlash, and it's like, and then it just creates more stress for the woman going through the journey because she's thinking about a PRP, and one of her friends it worked for, like, you know, I definitely have girls who are like, yeah, but it didn't work for 3 of my friends. I'm kind of hesitant to do it. Okay, then don't do it. Like I always say, listen to your instincts, but like, what we shouldn't do is say, I know everything about this thing, even though I know nothing. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, that's not your space. And I'm not going to say I know how to do an egg retrieval because I don't, and I'm never gonna.
And you know, I want to say, like, coming towards the end of this episode, it is my body, my choice on everything. It doesn't just apply to an abortion slogan, guys. It is my body, my choice with everything. My decisions, my choice how I decide to navigate my fertility journey. I have autonomy on my choices and how I navigate probably one of the toughest things a woman will go through. And if we can't be, you can put out whatever content you want as long as you're not defaming somebody else, attacking somebody else, or their patients.
That's right. That's right. And that it wasn't thoughtful. I mean, a thoughtful way to do it is you talk with the practitioner, you talk with the patient.
Yes.
You say, I want to do a piece on this. I'm collecting data, like a journalistic approach.
Yes. And let me collect all the data and come to you and maybe write a blog post about what the data is showing. I'm going to go out to these other doctors. I want to learn about their research. And then I will still make my own conclusion.
That's
but let me go on. Not instead of just looking for Instagram virality. But
I also think like that's it. No one likes the mainstream dogma to be questioned. However, like you said, IVF has been around for 45 years, guys. Like, this is not mainstream dogma, like, you know, like the laws of physics or something like that, you know, that have been around at least hundreds of years, I would say, you know, and some of those are actually being questioned. But we have to think about, we have to macro, I think, and step back.
I was just so excited to get you in Miami.
Thank you.
And do this episode with you because so much of your content just really resonates with me and who you are and how you're treating patients. And, you know, you work with 2 of my most favorite fertility doctors that I'm working with and I love. So thank you, Aimee, for being in Miami at the right time.
Thank you so much, Shimon, for having me. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you. And I hope, guys, this episode helps you and gives you a different, almost a different, fresh set of eyes on how you're approaching your fertility journey.
Yes.
So thank you.